So today we'll be speaking with Nicholas Anderson, who is the author of NOC, British Secret Operations. And in the book, Nicholas writes a bit about Big Pharma, and we wanted to discuss today some of the items that are in the book about Big Pharma. So Nicholas, go ahead and tell us what you'd like to talk about your book.
Well, obviously I have to be careful about what I say on the subject of pharmaceutical companies and the medical industry because they are a litigious lot, as well as the major television network that promote their business of sickness through paid commercials. What actually instigated me to write my book was a recall to active duty in early 1992, a few months after the collapse of the Soviet Union and communism. The longer story version can be read in the book, of course, but essentially the story was about a medical doctor that I helped exfiltrate in the mid-70s from the Soviet Union, who had returned there immediately upon the fall of communism at the end of 1991, and he wanted to meet me again. His request went through normal government diplomatic channels, and duly it got to me in California, where I was at the time, and I flew there to Moscow to see what it was that he wanted to talk to me again about. All quite interesting. The bottom line was that he claimed to have had a number of effective treatments and several cures to major diseases. Now, before I continue, I'm mindful of not getting up the hopes of those that are terminally ill and loved ones around them that may hear me say this, but all I want to say on here is if your traditional but open-minded medical doctor hasn't suggested it already, and you're looking at the end for some people, it wouldn't hurt to look into natural remedies, alternative medicine, and certain cases, even stem cell transplantations, even electromagnetic energetical medicine. I don't have enough time on here to talk about each one, but naturally, hopefully, you could Google some of those words and look it up.
Now,
I'm not as gullible. I'm sorry?
I hope I don't mind to interrupt you here, but is there more detail in the book that I'm not saying that people are going to use your book as a reference for what can be done, but is there detail in the book about that?
Well, understand that when I first wrote this manuscript, it was in non-fiction form, and in the UK here we have a system called a DA notice, which means Defense Advisory Notice. It's a committee that looks at anything that's written by former officers like myself and clears it. And unfortunately, they took out 400 pages of that.
Wow.
And there's a large majority of it related to what we're talking about. So obviously, I now also have my arms tied behind my back, and I'm talking about something that I've already been wrapped across the knuckles about.
Right.
So yes, I have put certain things in the book that somehow they didn't pick up on, and I was allowed to print it, and off I went. But also understand, please, that I'm not a gullible person. I didn't readily accept what he was telling me, requesting him to prove it to me, which he did do over 18 months. Even at the end of that time, there was a piece of me that I was thinking, why isn't all this information more readily available? More people know about these findings. And the interesting part about this was it wasn't till he appeared on a major U.S. program, which again I can't say the name, but it's a household name, primetime television, that I witnessed how American media prevented him from saying what he wanted to say. In fact, amazingly, they, on a couple of examples, took out a word that I know he said on the audio because I had the audio version. Mm-hmm. And they actually said the opposite of what he was saying. Now, I'm not the only person to say this goes on, but I've said that here on the air. It wasn't until then that I realized that he was onto something, and they were putting up the gates to stop it getting through, and I witnessed that. So I'm saying that now.
Right. Now, are you saying, by the way, that the former Soviet Union, that they have access to this type of medicine, or is it just something that was sort of secretive at the time?
Well, at the time, yes, in the beginning of the communism, and they were the enemy, yes, and yes, they came up with certain things that our side never discovered. And obviously, when I was a younger man in the mid-70s, our side decided that this doctor, this medical doctor, had something that they wanted on our side. So our exfiltration apparatus got him out, which I was involved in, and the medical doctors said many years later that what they'd done was to get him out and milk him for all the information that he had, but it still never got out. So that's why he went home again, where at the fall of communism. And that's why he was explaining to me, because obviously he trusted me, about what was going on. And I myself have now suffered 400 pages taken out of my book because he obviously was telling me something that I was trying to tell the world myself.
Right.
So the fact, what I'm leading up to is when the gates come up and 400 pages get deleted and all these things go on, you start to realize that you are onto something.
Right.
And all I can do here is to, in the few minutes I have here, is to say to people, if you like, read my book, read between the lines, understand there's other things that are going on in this world of medicine, and there are certain things in there that can lead you on to hopefully saving the loved one and the loved one. That's it.
Right. So I take it that this doctor, is he somebody that you know where he is now?
I still know him. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know if you discuss his name in the book or not.
I'm not allowed to say his name.
Right. Of course. Yeah. I kind of figured that much.
And I've had to use a pseudonym for him in my book.
Right.
But there are certain things that I've said in there that I hope it would help save some people's lives.
Right. Okay. Well, I greatly appreciate you discussing this. Now, is there anything else that we wanted to make sure that we covered before we wrap things up for today, before the next installment?
One more time, I would like to say, look up electromagnetic energetical medicine, stem cell transplantation. That's the main two areas where there are improvements and saving of lives going on. Not necessarily a cure, but certainly an effective treatment.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more thing. In the West, we do placebo studies, but in other countries like Germany, Russia, Cuba, they do placebo-free studies. conducted simultaneously with placebo studies. So I've found as an outsider looking at the medical establishment is that they say it must only be one way, which is placebo. And I've discovered as an outsider that it's actually best, it would help our country move forward if we also did placebo as well as placebo-free studies. That's the punchline.
Now, is that something that has to do with whether or not a drug is approved or not approved? Are you talking about the research that they do on the effectiveness of drugs?
Well, drugs, believe it or not, come from 25% of all pharmaceutical drugs come from 1% of natural plants. So that's something else to look at. Why don't they increase what natural plants have? If 1% of natural plants produces 25% of pharmaceutical medicine, it blows the mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that, of course, it's not all that uncommon to understand that the reason why they don't do that is because the pharmaceutical companies can't patent particular plants or things like that. Although Monsanto does that, by the way. Monsanto does patent certain seeds, even things that are natural and organic. But I don't know if the pharmaceutical companies are able to actually sell synthesized organic materials as actual drugs, because they could be doing that with vitamins, and they could be doing that with minerals and certain compounds that are organic, like amino acids and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Just somebody from the outside looking in, I freely admit I'm not a medical person. I'm not trained for that. But I did see what this doctor did in person. And it was fantastic. And sadly, most of what he's done never makes it to the people that need it.
Right.
And even myself has had my hands tied about it. So I'm on record as saying something here.
Right.
And that's about all I can say.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thank you very much, Nicholas. Now, if anybody wants any further information about your book, they can go to nicholasanderson.info, and from there they can look at more information about you, the author, and also they would have the opportunity to purchase the book through Amazon. So thank you very much for your time today.